All right, very good. Hey, everybody, welcome to our Law Tech Connect preview number 2. So great to have you all here, and we've got some amazing folks to talk about their panels. This year marks the 5th anniversary of Law Tech Connect, and we are leveling up again this year at Exponential 2026 in Detroit. So check it out. We will be directly embedded in Exponential, unlike previous years where we were kind of standalone on a Monday. We're going to be going live Wednesday afternoon around noontime till about 5. We have a happy hour Wednesday night at 5 Iron Golf, so register for that as well. And then Thursday morning, we'll be going from about 8 to noon again. So it's going to be bridging 2 days right in the heart of Exponential and in the heart of Detroit. And we're really excited. So early bird registration still applies to Law Tech Connect, even though I believe the main event has cut off their early bird. But go ahead and register now. And when you do, you also get the Expo Hall pass as well as access to our happy hour. By the way, Robb here from TEAL, Robb Monkman, is one of our sponsors for the happy hour. And we've got Mary Caitlin Ray from Crowell Mooring. They are silver sponsors this year. And Jennifer Daskal from Venable law firm. And they are one of our bronze sponsors. So we really appreciate all you guys. And this event isn't possible without all of our amazing sponsors. So remember, everybody, sign on up, register now. If you missed preview panel number 1, we did cover panels 1 through 4 last month. So check that back out if you want to get a deeper dive into some of that content. And let's go ahead and go around the horn first. So I kind of did a mini intro, but I'm gonna let you guys elaborate. So Mary Caitlin, could you go first and just tell a little bit about your background?
Happy to do that. Thanks, Dawn, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited about our chat today, and of course, to join the 5th year of Law Tech Connect in Detroit. I can't believe it's 5 years. It's flown by. I'm Mary Caitlin Ray. I'm a partner at Crowell Mooring in our Washington, D.C. office, where I advise manned and unmanned aircraft operators and owners, manufacturers, and aviation sector supply chain businesses and investors on all aspects of FAA regulatory compliance, as well as transactional matters. Prior to joining the Crowell and Mooring team, I was an attorney in the FAA's Chief Counsel's Office, where I advised the Next Gen and UAS program offices on commercial contracting matters, including the UAS integration pilot program, which has now been followed by the EIPP. So I'm excited to talk about all of those programs at Law Tech Connect.
Awesome. And Mary Caitlin is representing panel 5, which is called Drone Pathways in the Sky, Global UTM, and Beyond Visual Line of Sight Integration. So you can understand why we have her on that panel. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that there here in a second. All right. We have our panel 6 rep, Katie Inman from HK Law. We're having some technical difficulties, just like we did with Joel last time. So we're going to go ahead and skip to panel 7, layers of protection, airspace awareness, safety, and counter drone defense. And Jennifer from Venable is going to be repping that panel today. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great. Thanks, Dawn. I'm so glad to be here and part of this conversation. I am a partner at Venable Law Firm. I've been at the firm just under a year. Before that, I was at the White House as a Deputy Homeland Security Advisor and also spent some time at DHS, including as the Acting General Counsel. Have been very focused on the counter UAS space for some time. Among the many crises that I dealt with in the last 4 years of the prior administration, this was one of those issues that kept me up at night and have brought that work to the private sector, including by some efforts we are doing also at the conference on a tabletop exercise where we will be exercising the response to a hypothetical multi-pronged drone attack, as well as on an exercise we did in North Dakota in October, and some work we are building out on drones, critical infrastructure, and national security. And I'm very pleased to be part of this conversation.
Well, thanks so much, Jennifer. And I'll tell you, the timing couldn't be more perfect in a way. We just had drones flying over Barksdale Air Force Base and swarm waves of 12 to 15 drones. By the way, everybody, Thursday, we have a special full crew on this with 2 retired Air Force generals and a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Security Forces member. So check that out, 11 a.m. Eastern on this channel as well. But last but not least, we have Robb Monkman from TEAL. Robb is repping Panel 8, building digital fortresses, cybersecurity, national security, and communications resilience. And that's what TEAL is all about. But Robb, tell us about you.
Yeah, I'm the CMO at TEAL, and been here for about 4 years, and really we're an enabler for these mission critical drone operations, helping a number of different leading drone companies in the space, making sure that they've got that reliable, resilient, always on connectivity so that they've got complete connectivity to complete their mission.
Awesome, awesome. So, folks, as you kind of see these experts and think about these 4 panels, and these are the panels from Thursday morning. They really form a powerful arc. How we integrate drones globally with UTM and BVLOS rules. Panel 6, how AI and autonomy raises new legal and ethical questions. Next, how we layer airspace awareness in counter UAS for safety in all of these things. And finally, how do we secure that digital backbone, communication, cyber, and supply chain? So let's start with that path in the sky and panel 5. And this is Mary Caitlin's portion here, the drone pathways in the sky, global UTS, global UTM, and BVLOS. So, Mary Caitlin, you kind of alluded to it, but you have been with us, I think, from the very beginning. Panel 5 builds on a couple years of global drone regulation panels here at LawTech Connect and takes this deeper dive into UTM systems. Give us a quick overview of what you expect your panel will actually cover.
Yeah, thanks so much, Don. And I have to say, this is we've had a panel of this, sort of general iteration for the last 5 years. And this is one of the ones that I look forward to the most at LawTech Connect every year, because we continue to be at an inflection point in this space. So for the last 2 years, we've been laying the groundwork, really talking about the architecture of drone regulations and what that should look like, about remote ID, about category-based frameworks. And this year, we're going to go deeper. So panel 5 is really about the operational frontier. How do you fly beyond visual line of sight at scale? And what infrastructure from a legal, technical, and institutional perspective needs to exist for that to happen? So I'll give you sort of the 3 threads that I think we're going to be pulling together as part of this panel. And the first is Europe. The EU has built what is arguably the world's most comprehensive regulatory architecture for drone operations. You have their foundational regulations, which establish open, specific, and certified operational categories. And then critically, you have an implementing regulation, and that's 2021-664, which we'll get into on the panel. But this created the U-Space framework, which was their designated airspace in which a common set of U-Space services, including network remote ID, geofencing, traffic information, strategic conflict deflection, must be provided by an authorized U-Space service provider that operates under the oversight of a single common information service provider. So on paper, this is a really elegant and beautiful system. In practice, and this is what we'll get to in the panel, designated U-Space airspace is rolling out somewhat unevenly across EU member states. Some countries are more ahead. Others are still working through implementation on a national scale. So, from the EU perspective, the promise is real. It's there. But so is the gap between, this really well thought out and laid out framework and, actual physical flying. The second thread is North America, specifically, the FAA's ever-evolving approach to BVLOS. So for years, BVLOS in the United States was essentially a game of waivers. You applied, you waited, you got, what was usually a pretty narrow authorization tied to a specific operation using a specific drone in a specific geographical area. The FAA's BVLOS Aviation Rulemaking Committee, the BVLOS ARC, changed that conversation by recommending a shift to more performance-based rules rather than case-by-case waivers. So we then saw the BVLOS NPRM, which really signals, I think, a genuine move towards a more scalable framework, and one that will incorporate the concept of recognized UAS service suppliers, sort of the US equivalent of those USSPs in the EU. And these will be third-party entities that can provide services enabling BVLOS operations. We're definitely not at the finish line yet, but the direction of travel, I'd say, in North America is clear, and the panel will unpack more on what that means for operators in the US today. So third and finally, Asia Pacific, Japan and Australia in particular are running very sophisticated national roadmaps. Japan's Civil Aeronautics Act amendments have progressively opened higher risk drone operations through a levels-based system. And Japan has been particularly deliberate about public-private partnerships in building out their UTM infrastructure. Australia's CASA has been running BVLOS trials and developing its UTM framework through its UTM sandbox and also through broader aviation safety cohort programs. And these aren't just experiments in Japan and in Australia. They're shaping how these frameworks are maturing from an operational perspective. So what ties all of this together, and I think what makes this panel really distinctive, is that we're not just comparing these regulations across the world in the abstract. We're looking at how operators will actually navigate these systems once they're fully mature, because the law on the page and the experience on the ground can be very different things in very different operational environments.
All right. Wow. That was super thorough. And so I'm going to kind of cut to the chase here, Mary Caitlin. Crowell is supporting us as a silver sponsor again this year. So from your vantage point, why is Law Tech Connect and your panel in particular really worth people's time, especially if they're trying to understand where BVLOS and UTM are headed?
I'll be honest, there's no shortage of conferences in the aviation space, right? Despite being what many people would say is sort of a niche area. But, I think that I want to be very specific about what makes this event worth everyone's time. Law Tech Connect sits at the intersection of law, technology, and business in a way that very few events do. So the panels here are not just regulatory briefings for their own sake. They're built around questions that operators, investors, and legal practitioners are actually wrestling right now and wrestling with equally. So the conversations that will happen in that room in Detroit and outside it and around it tend to be, I think, unusually direct and substantive. So I think, from our perspective, Crowell's support of this event reflects exactly that view, and that's sort of our ethos and how we practice law, to be very, business friendly, and acknowledging that the intersection of emerging aviation technology and law is where some of the most important and complex work in our field is happening. We at Crowell are really proud to be a part of that conversation. And so if you're here today, and probably most importantly, if you're joining us in May, you're in the right room.
Thank you so much for that. That was really kind. The beauty of a live event is that people don't drop off a call. So we're having Jennifer come and go, and hopefully she'll come back. But, like I said, we weren't able to get Katie in to talk about panel 6. I want Mike to pop up our top marketing image for that: the minds and machines, AI law, and ethics in autonomous systems. And I'm just going to very briefly do an overview of what this is going to cover. And we're talking holistically: the defense side, lethal autonomous weapons debates, DoD AI ethical principles, human in the loop versus human on the loop, human out of the loop, how real operators are in places like Ukraine are influencing military doctrine, especially when it comes to AI and autonomous systems. We're going to be talking about, of course, the civil and commercial side as well. How foundational models like OpenAI, Claude, and others are being pulled into engineering workflows, ops playbooks. We're going to talk about Claude bots, you name it. And of course, we're going to talk about regulatory frameworks. The EU AI Act, US Executive Order 14110 on safe, secure, and trustworthy AI. And we're seeing a lot of open debates with specific companies in the administration. So AI is everywhere. It's such an interesting and rich topic. It's going to be an amazing panel. So hopefully you all will join us. And we have incredible people on that. Again, not just Katie Inman from HK Law, but we've got Jesse Hamill from Victus Technologies representing industry, and a whole bunch of just the sharpest minds on the legal side, from Mary Caitlin Ray's colleague, Matthew Ferraro, and Michael Atkinson, to GT Law's Todd Basil, and Fox Rothschild's Mark McKinnon. So check that one out. Panel 6 will be the second one up on Thursday morning. Okay, let's get into Jennifer's panel. Jennifer, sorry we're having kind of in and out problems with you here, but while I got you, let's get going. Airspace awareness and counter drone defense. Panel 7 is going to be an amazing panel. Like you said, you've been in this counter drone space for a while through DHS and some of your other work. So tell us a little bit about the big ideas behind this session.
Great. Thanks, Dawn. I'm very excited about this panel. As you said earlier, it couldn't be more timely as we're watching things play out in the Middle East right now, and with drone swarms in Barksdale, Louisiana, just reminds us that what's happening overseas is not likely to stay overseas, and we need to start increasingly thinking about homeland and homeland preparedness. And so this session is going to focus significantly on those issues. We'll talk about both the baseline of where we are on a legal, regulatory, and operational framework, but also where we need to go in order to create the legal, policy, regulatory, and operational space to better protect critical infrastructure across the homeland, as well as civilians and others that gather in large places where there are vulnerabilities posed by the misuse and the unauthorized use of drones.
Yeah, what I love about your panel, Jennifer, too, is so many industry reps on it to talk about the various technologies, combined with, of course, folks like you with that legal expertise. So, and we got Dan Sennett also from HK Law on the legal side. It's going to be amazing. So, the legal authorities piece is something that has really caught people's attention. Can you tell us a little bit about the technologies and legal issues you'll be covering?
Sure. So we'll spend some time talking about where we are legally, which is, I think as many of your viewers will know, in last year at the end of December, new authorization was passed as part of the Safer Skies Act, incorporated into the National Defense Authorization Act of 2026, that for the first time gives state and local authorities, trained state and local authorities, the opportunity to engage in certain mitigation measures. That training has begun. It is happening in small numbers for now, with the hopes that it will ramp up over time. And there are real limits on what private sector actors can do in this space. There are a range of things that can be done on the detection space, but there are legal limits that prevent most private sector actors, with the exception of certain correctional facility owners and operators, from engaging in mitigation. So that's one piece that we will spend a fair bit of time talking about, just what the legal framework is right now and what is needed in order to provide better protections. And then on the technical front, particularly on the detection side, before we even get into mitigation, just the importance of a multi-layered detection system that tracks and reflects the fact that drones themselves emit different kinds of signals. Some don't emit any signals, and the importance of having a multi-layered system that involves a combination of radar detection, RF detection, acoustic detection, and others that will help ensure that there's a true, full understanding of what is in the airspace in order to distinguish between legitimate uses of drones, aircraft, other things that are flying in the sky, and those that we ought to be concerned about. Yeah, thanks. I mean, it's something that this administration is clearly very focused on. There were, as part of the Big Beautiful Bill, there was $500 million that was appropriated specifically on counter UAS to go to state and locals to support the development of counter UAS systems. 250 million of that has been allocated. The focus has been on the 11 localities plus the DMV, District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia, where there will be games and operational centers focused on those games, with the real goal of getting in place increased detection systems and supporting operational coordination between stadiums, venues, and local and state police. It is a huge area of focus. There's a lot of work that needs to happen in order to ensure effective coordination and in order to ensure that the right, as I said, detection systems are in place so that there is the kind of multi-layered defense structure and multi-layered understanding of what's in the sky to be able to effectively identify, deter, and then, if needed, take mitigation action against unauthorized or malicious drone use.
Monkman from TEAL. Robb, give us the high-level overview of your panel.
Absolutely. I think the best way to frame panel 8 is with a simple idea. If the drone is first on scene, the network can't be last. And because we're seeing across public safety, defense, commercial operations that autonomy only works if connectivity, the connection holds when everything else is breaking down. So this panel really looks at the full stack of threats: GPS spoofing, jamming, command link interference, cloud and backend vulnerabilities, but through the lens that not just can the drone fly, is it operational, but can the system stay connected, trusted, operational when it matters most?
Yeah, that's the beautiful summary. And we've all seen reporting on GPS spoofing, jamming, and cyber attack on drones in the Ukraine and other contested environments. How will your panel, Robb, use those lessons to frame the threats that face commercial and defense users today?
Great question. Ukraine has shown us that connectivity is the battlefield. You've got constant GNSS denial, jamming, as you mentioned, spoofing that makes GPS unreliable. You've got electronic warfare targeting command links and telemetry. And critically, you've got both sides adapting fast. In those environments, in theater, it's not the drone that fails first. Oftentimes, it's the connectivity, whether that's RF, satellite, or in certain environments, cellular connectivity. So that lesson translates directly to domestic operations, GFR, these sorts of things. When a drone is responding to a 911 call, for instance, inspecting a pipeline, critical infrastructure, supporting border operations, it becomes a force multiplier. It's great, but only if the link is there. If connectivity is good enough, that's actually a huge risk because good enough breaks exactly when you need it the most sometimes. So we're moving from a mindset of connectivity as a feature to connectivity as mission critical infrastructure.
I love that, Robb. And, obviously that's your bread and butter there at TEAL, this end-to-end resilience for comms links, from the aircraft and payload to the command link and back-end networks and cloud services. Not only are we talk about all of those technologies, but also we're going to talk about practical architectures, controls, and of course the legal side of this. What do you expect attendees will hear about those things?
Well, you are are the legal experts, but for us, end-to-end resilience starts with accepting that the network needs to be part of the drone, not something external. That means multiple forms of redundancy, SAT, RF, cellular, all need to be considered depending on where the mission is taking place. In addition, multi-sensor navigation, GPS plus inertial and vision, because GPS will fail. Secure boot and trusted firmware, because compromise often starts at the edge. So local autonomy, because if the network drops, the mission still needs to be safe and needs to have a positive outcome. So at the end of the day, I guess our big message is going to be that connectivity can't be an afterthought. And where TEAL comes in is with that multi-carrier dynamic failover and orchestration across networks and technologies. Because in real world ops, especially BB loss, single network dependency is it's a single point of failure.
Absolutely. And, I know you're not the attorney on the panel. We've got a bunch of them, including Davis Hake from Venable, Jennifer's colleague. And we also have Evan Wolf from Aiken and Sarah Baxenberg from Wiley Rhine, among some of the other attorneys on this panel. But, we're going to talk about things like CMMC, DFARS clauses, equipment restrictions like the FCC's covered list and NDAA bans, etc. How do you, in your perspective as an industry rep, see these not just as burdens, but design constraints and market differentiators for people that are going to be in the audience?
I think it all comes down to trust. You can't treat security or the network as an afterthought. And so, companies that design, as you mentioned, CMMC, NIST, supply chain constraints from day one are building systems that are going to be trusted by default. And that matters. And we've seen why that matters. Government critical infrastructure buyers aren't just asking, does it work? They're asking, will it work under stress? Can we trust it? More importantly, where does it come from? Is it built here in the US? Is it produced by a foreign entity? This includes where your connectivity solution, like TEAL, is built and hosted. So if you've built a clean, compliant supply chain, resilient communications architecture, and a defensible security posture, you're not just compliant, you're competitive. So security by design becomes a market signal. So
Yeah, actually, that is actually a great, almost like tagline. Security by design, your market signal. I love that. So, if someone comes to your panel, Rob, and what are the key, like I love how almost all of these panels throughout all of Law Tech Connect, we give lessons learned and practical tips and things like that. What do you hope that they'll take away for the next 6 to 12 months in terms of action items, actionable steps?
So I'd first anchor it back to the core idea that you don't want to let the network be last. Don't let connectivity be an afterthought. And I'm a broken record with this messaging. But I think three steps, the 6 to 12 months. First, map out your dependencies. Where is the mission taking place? Where do you rely on GPS? Where do you rely on a single network or link? Those are going to end up being some of your biggest risks. Number two, treat connectivity as mission critical, invest in redundancy. What we do is, as far as orchestration and failover, move beyond just coverage with some of the traditional approaches to assured connectivity. And then last, third, I'd say operational resilience. So vet your vendors and your supply chain. It goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier. Run the real world failure scenarios and test things out, because autonomy doesn't fail gracefully if the networks fail. It just stops being useful entirely. So really excited to get into some of these issues and topics on the panel.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love that. And for those that didn't know, Rob and Teal actually sponsored our live stream from CES. So you could see him on the floor there talking about all the technologies that rely on resilient connectivity. And we recently had an article in Autonomy Global about this topic as well. So, Rob, thanks for all your support across all the different platforms, and what you do is so critically important. So I'm going to wrap it up here. So bottom line, Thursday morning, action-packed, as you can see. Panels 5 through 8 answer a lot of big questions like, how will Beyond Visual Line of Sight and UTM actually work, not just in the US, but across the globe? How will we govern AI and autonomous systems responsibly? How do we layer airspace awareness and counter UAS to protect against and prevent that one bad day? And how do we secure that digital backbone, cyber communication, supply chain that all of this stuff depends on? So as we close it out, I'd love for each one of our guests here today to just give a quick closer and tell people how they can follow you and your work. And of course, besides meeting you at Law Tech Connect, so everybody should register for that. But go ahead, it's 30 seconds each. We'll start with Mary Caitlin.
All right. Thanks, Dawn. My 30-second elevator speech for, what I'm looking forward to most and why to attend is really to learn from all of the stakeholders who are going to be in one room at the same place at the same time. I find the most valuable things that I take away from Law Tech Connect are, connecting with other legal professionals who maybe are not, in the exact same niche that I am, and then also connecting with the technical experts and with the business experts and finding out what their pain points are. And I really learn a lot from them as, the industry experts. And I learn a lot of things that I can take away to my practice and, use towards the benefit of my clients. So I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone, to being on panel 5 and to learning from all the other esteemed panelists.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jennifer.
So I share that same goal of learning from all the amazing experts across legal, technical, and practitioners that will be at this conference. Super excited to be there. I also, Don, you already mentioned on the Tuesday before, on May 12th, we are doing a tabletop exercise where we will be working through a hypothetical set of drone attacks and the response. So urge those who are listening and are interested to reach out to me, and would love to include others in that conversation as well. And looking forward to being part of this conversation and to meeting everybody in person soon.
Awesome. And last but certainly not least, Rob.
I echo what everyone's saying. I'm just thrilled to be part of this group, really highly intelligent, smart people, and to learning, but also to network and meet everybody in person. These digital interfaces are great, but actually meeting people in person is really something I'm looking forward to. So I guess I'll just wrap with one last tagline, Dawn, that, if we get the network right, the connectivity right, we're going to unlock everything else. And so looking forward to the discussion in May.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to play off of that. Law Tech Connect, as everybody's alluded to, is more than just about amazing content and walking away with your head full of incredible education. It's also about connectivity. It's about connecting with each other. So not only register for Law Tech Connect while early bird prices still apply, but also take a second and register separately for our happy hour on Wednesday night from 5:30 to 7:30 at 5 Iron Golf, TEAL, Northern Plains UAS Test Site, Carasoft, P3 Tech Consulting, and TAC Team Group, all currently sponsors of that event. It's going to be awesome. 5:30 to 7:30, bridging the two different sessions. Again, we covered panels 5 to 8 this morning. We covered panels 1 to 4 last month. Check it all out if you want to go ahead and rescan, and hopefully you'll just come to all of it. So that's all she wrote. Thank you three very much and thanks everybody out there for listening. That is all she wrote. We are out here.